All right, thank you for staying with us. Let's see what you're saying online. Yep. There's a lot of feedback coming through on 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya, Trevor Mbiji at Zinzi_K, hashtag Daybreak. Engineer Lazaro says mega corruption eroded more economic dreams in Uhuru's regime. We witnessed some slight growth during Kibaki's era, especially after formation of the coalition government. Okay, Daybreak used the hashtag that on Twitter. Nahashan, you say, good morning. Did you know that 5.8 million establishments in Kenya aren't registered? Did you also know 93% of unlicensed establishments record a monthly turnover of less than 50,000 Kenyan shillings? It's true. As soon as you register, KRA and other government agencies drown you in taxes and regulations. All right. Ali says high inflation in early 1990s killed our economy and put heavy burden on Wanjiku to present. To present, yes. All right, let's go ahead. You wanted to write on it.
Yes, okay. First, it is not easy to deal with politicians. Osiany and
I'm a political leader.
And Honorable Kiprota Kirwa. Yes. In fact, when I was young, they used to call me Kirwa because we used to talk so much, and they said this one talks like Kirwa. So today, let me. Wow.
You were a politician from childhood.
No, hold on. The right of reply. I think what I was pointing out, Cindy and Trevor, was that our lack of discipline and focus is actually our greatest undoing. Look at the Vision 2030. Vision 2030 was not just a product of the Kibaki regime. It was a product of the appreciation that we need a long-term plan that will outgo any regime. And no one is seeing it anymore. And it was the private sector made a contribution. There was only one gap that was missing in Vision 2030, and that is the values pillar. And that was corrected by the Constitution and Article 10.2 together with Chapter 6 of our Constitution, that it is not just one thing to fix hardware, we also need to fix software. Like the definition of development over time has actually evolved. That development is not just having the skyscrapers. Development is also having a people who are able to demand high standards. And you can demand high standards without having all the skyscrapers and the good roads. Today, China has developed, done very well in terms of hardware. But Beijing, for example, has an issue of air pollution. So the balance between the two is what a people needs to have. So my concern, for example, with BBI was that BBI summarizes everything and says that it actually acknowledges and says we have invested so much on hardware. It is high time we do what we do. We do software, which is something I agree and I support. What I'm pointing out is that from the economic conversation and the proposals on shared equity, there is need for a rethink on the proposals that we have. Now, the other challenge I have is that if we move directly to BBI, we need to ask ourselves, what is the connection between what we are doing within BBI and an ongoing long-term plans that we are saying? What are we abandoning and what are we moving ahead? And also, what is the plan? Because look today, within the political class, you do not see a clear consensus within BBI, meaning that it is actually possible for another regime to come in 2022 and discard all those things. So what I'm pointing out is, how are we ensuring that we get back to rhythm and we go back to order? Today, under the Kibaki, actually the Grand Coalition government, you would see many projects branded Vision 2030. You could see the consistency. This gentleman called Mugo Kibati, every conversation, you could see we are doing this, and this is the direct linkage to Vision 2030. Come the Jubilee administration, we no longer hear much about Vision 2030. We are hearing Big Four. Why isn't the private sector keeping the government accountable? But we had the rate cap the other day that eliminated and crowd, as in we had two things, rate cap, and we also had a heavy borrowing on the part of government. Then what happens? You have something called crowding out. The government, when the government, if you are lending as a financial institutions, making a choice between a private sector and a government, you will definitely give to government because of the issue of security, and you're lending to sovereign. So it was good for us to have lifted the rate cap from an economic point of view. Now it allows proper pricing of credit. Now, we need to see the dividends of that and also the translation of that into the facilitating the private sector to do its work. I gave that example about the SME in Ravine. The same applies across the board. You look at Makueni. Makueni are producing now milk, and they're producing mangoes. If you look at the mangoes in Makueni, beyond the drying and the juice, there is nothing much that we're seeing out of those. Now, how do you build an economy into the long term? It is asking ourselves, how much can we squeeze away out of the mango? And then what kind of support frameworks do we require? So that if it is packaging, for example, that mango, you ask yourselves, how do we package so that other businesses grow around that mango?
Value addition.
So you do the research. But you will see tomorrow we are doing mangoes, we are doing milk. You see, Makueni is doing milk, Kakamega is also doing another milk plant, and they are all driven by the government. The role of the private sector is also not very clear in the process. So for me, the challenge I have is that we have very good ideas, but the thoroughness in thinking through those ideas, piecing them through, pointing out the role of everybody across the point is what I'm lacking.
Kibrero, let's start with solutions now, because we're running out of time here. How do we fix this economy going forward? From where you stand, you've been in this government, you see where the loopholes are. How should it be fixed?
And given the political temperatures of the country, with only 2 years to the election,
and BBI also
and BBI as well, President Uhuru's government, do they have time to sort of redeem this economy in their last term?
Yeah, before I do an assessment of the current regime, it's important also that we ask ourselves, where are we? We are in Kenya. There are a number of things that we should ask ourselves. What is the comparative advantage that we have as a nation? We have a strong human resource capacity. This human resource, are we keeping it busy or are we keeping it idle? Now, what are the resources that we have? What can we produce in Kenya that Uganda cannot produce? Where is our market? So all these things must be done with a bit of linkages. For me, the government is the midwife of all the processes that happen in a country. And as is the case of the midwife, you don't take away the baby from the hospital and leave the mother without the baby. What the government needs to do is to reduce impunity. What you were saying about the issue of not Cabernet, Eldama Ravine, that is real impunity. And you know, impunity percolates down from the leadership. Once the leadership says, okay, we are a government of impunity, even a policeman in the road, on the road is going to suffer from that problem of impunity. So the less impunity that pervades our atmosphere, the better it is for our country. Now the solution is leadership. And that is the main problem in Africa, lack of focused leadership. Number two, we need to ask ourselves, how can we make this entrepreneur have some strong technical efficiency so that he can produce at a lesser cost, at less cost than the neighbor or the neighbor in Tanzania. And the moment we are able to do that, then we are assisting that person to access a market and control that particular market. The second issue is value addition. You cannot run away from value addition. The GDP of this country from agriculture sector and its linkages is still at 30%. Now, you cannot ignore 30% of your strength. And it's also a food security source. At the same time, it employs a majority of our people.
Right.
That is, yes.
It's 25% of the GDP?
Yes.
Employs 75%.
75%.
Yes. But when you add linkages, you go up to 30. At least. That I know.
I see.
Yes. When you add linkages are things like transport, like processing, you go up to 30 of our GDP. Because GDP is a product of the services and the goods you produce in any 1 year.
So does Uhuru's regime have time to redeem this economy?
My worry is that do they really have focus? You really, when you wake up without focus, today it is BBI, tomorrow it is 2022, the other day is fight against the corruption, then you personalize corruption, you give a face to corruption, that corruption is chemosop, corruption is chemosop, impunity is chemosop, then you lose the
I'm a man of God, by the way. Just for your information.
David, let's talk about
No, David, don't take it personally. The second issue is for us to have realistic options. As a country, let's have realistic options that are achievable within a short term, but also anchored on the long-term vision, 2030. As he said, it was not Kibaki regime alone, but Kibaki regime midwifed the Vision 2030 by involving all the stakeholders, including the private sector and even people from abroad. I remember we were in the same committee with the late Kalestas Juma, who was a professor in Harvard. All those, we were able to midwife that process. Finally, on this issue of is political tolerance. I've told you before that politics in Kenya affects economy.
Very much.
So if you don't have political tolerance, you are not likely to have any political achievement. That is my challenge.
Okay. David Osiany, what do you think are the solutions henceforth? How do we fix this going forward?
The economy cannot grow in space. That's why I was saying when Vincent was saying, no, when I said BBI, but later he would start and recount everything I'd said and agree with me, basically. The economy, as has been alluded to by Waziri, is politics affects the economy. If we are going to eventually fix the economy, we have to fix the politics. If there are solutions or propositions towards fixing the politics, and BBI is one of those solutions, we have to embrace a multi-pronged approach towards fixing the politics. Now, if we decide that this is what we are, what's our competitive advantage or comparative advantage, and we realize and reckon and know, based on facts and based on our culture, that agriculture has been our mainstay. It employs most of our people. It has a big impact on our economy. We have to focus on what would be an agrarian revolution. How do we get the young people who are unemployed to embrace agriculture as a credible and respectful source of income? Modest source of income, so that you're not telling them just take 200 shillings a day. Does that help him? How do we ensure that if manufacturing is part of the big four, and I think manufacturing and food security need to be collapsed into one thing towards fixing agriculture in this country, ensuring that we expand agro-processing. Our focus needs to be trained on one thing in which we can do so well, so that we are an authority in it. Every person would endear and love to come to see how we have done well. Today, if you go to Mauritius, they decided that sugarcane was their thing. Every country around here, even Uganda, which has tried, even the Kenanas, Sudan, which is quite big, goes to Mauritius to learn from them how to do sugar. They decided to completely transform it and run it professionally. It's unlike what we do. So we are distributed here all over. We cannot be a small scale, we can't continue with the subsistence farming and hope that it will be impactful. The MP for Bondo today, Gideon Ochanda, did something fantastic. He went to his neighborhoods, just a simple thing that goes a long way. Went to his neighbors and said, you guys, you can't have 1 acre and do your maize and 1 acre. So what did he do? He convinced them to put together all their land and till about 50 to 100 acres. The returns on that were great. They saw money they have never seen. They even were able to do rice in a section. Say, we have put together our land. Are we going to have that kind of thinking? Now, political leadership, the tempo set by any incumbent political leader and how he manages any possible successor is where we will get it right or wrong. It's what we need to fix.
Right.
We are unable to stick on Vision 2030s of this world because we just don't have disciplined political leadership. Priorities are wrong. The priorities are not even driven by the political leaders themselves, but by the interests that surround the political leaders. So if someone is going to fund your campaign at the tune of 10 billion shillings, and you are going to let him to steer you off the trajectory of the country, a set template by the country, like Vision 2030,
let me
okay,
say,
Vincent, even as you're giving your last comment on the solution, we wouldn't do justice if we don't answer Trevor's question on what sort of economy will our children inherit? What are the future trends you're seeing, even as you give your final comment?
Oh, so the question and then the final question. I hear you right. Discipline. I think he's just alluded to something, and I would want to build on. It is making those hard choices. If we are saying that our economy is agri-based, are we ready to make the hard choices? Let me give an example. Our economy is in rain-fed. One of the most productive part of our country is Kisii. If you look at Kisii, it is also one of the most populous area. If you do an aerial photography of Kisii and you see it's an area that's densely populated, are we also ready to make the bold decision to say, because this part of Kisii is highly productive and the impact of high density population, we want to do a concentration of this population and actually tell everybody leave the farms and urbanize? It is that kind of leadership that you require. If you look at the data that we have, it is not only agriculture, even livestock is actually one of the most highly rewarding sectors, where if you put 1 shilling into the agriculture, into the livestock sector, the multiplier effect is 4. Unlike even as in the agriculture that we know. So the data is there, the answers are there. Are we ready to make that bold decision to follow through? Now, if you focus on livestock, look at Botswana. They borrowed the template from Kenya. And then they've now added the entire value chain into that livestock sector, that it is not only meat, but also the milk products. And also when you have beef and beef products, you are generating knowledge out of that you are exporting. As your experts are moving to other countries to share this knowledge, that's also a resource that you're getting. So for me, it is the decisiveness, the discipline to follow through, and also the commitment to go through the pain. In my summative comments, I would say that we also have to blame. It's very easy to point at the politicians. It's the politicians here and the rest. But we also need to play our part as the public. Look at the conversation, including the media, Cinzia and Trevor. Just look at the summary of the 22-22 conversation. You will realize that there is who is going to run, which combination is going to win. There is very little scrutiny about what is it that they will do. So I actually also challenge the media to say, hey guys, we know that the Rutos, the Railas, all the Joes, they will run for politics because the currency of politics is power. So they will go for it. And that's why BBI conversation and all this is happening. They will do that. That is their game. But what is it that they will do when they get there? Moving from the personalities to the principles is a conversation that is very thin. And I can tell you for sure, if we are, because you have asked the question about what is it that our children will inherit. Yes. This is what I challenge you, Trevor. I know the questions are to this side. Is it when you have a conversation around BBI, let us summarize to Kenyans, these are our issues as Kenyans. And then anyone who is answering the question of what will they do to those things, please elect them, irrespective of their parties. You will shift the conversation from personality to principles.
That will require political maturity from the voter side. For the
simple reason, we've had brilliant ideas executed whenever we interview these people. We have had 9 stadia built, and you know, it looks wonderful. We will build. So if we were to elect you based on your promise, that's not a ticket enough. My challenge rather would be, on top of that, and I agree to an extent, we have to assess them based on their capability. But also, if they have a track record, look at what is it they have promised before. And have they delivered on their promises? Now then, based on that, we can say, if they promise this today, they will deliver tomorrow. Until that is done.
You've not been into office. And how will you be?
Those who have not been to office, that's why I'm saying that's very different. Yes. The pedestal is different. You can't set the same standard of questioning the people. So anyone who has not had an executive role, for example, or a role before, parliamentarian, MCA, must be questioned on. And there's going to be a basic track record on consistency and things like that.
Let's have Kipruto with the last thing.
With the risk of extension of time, there are people who perform better on a lower pedestal. But the higher they go, they run out of the internal limit. But there are also people who perform better when they aspire to higher offices because possibly resources are available. Now, the main problem with Kenya is that we are still tribal. We are pretending that we are not tribal, and we are running away from that. The moment we accept that we come from different nations and nationalities, but we happen to be within the confines of Kenya, and we tolerate each other, and we think of national cohesion, that is where we'll get closer to real political parties. Because even today, Jubilee as is structured, minus Ruto minus Huru. Jubilee is no more.
Right.
ODM minus Raila is nothing.
True.
What is the other one? ANC minus Musalia will just be wobbling. Wiper minus Kalonzo is nowhere. Fort Kenya, in my opinion, and I'm not in Fort Kenya, has some semblance of local support, but cannot transcend two or three counties. Our main problem is lack of national cohesion.
All right, that's a fantastic place to leave it. Honorable Kipruto Rapkirwa, former Minister of Agriculture, thank you so much for making time. Vincent Kimosop, economist with Sovereign Insight, and David Osiany, CEO, Crestwood Marketing and Communication, is also a governance expert. Thank you for making time this morning. That's where we leave it for now.